Hey, what's going on? I'm Keith here at Sports Vibes TV, and in this video, we're going to be looking at some trades that have occurred in the NBA over the past few years. Now, the purpose of this video is to help you gauge what it might cost the Knicks if we were to go out there and get, let's say, a Dame Lillard, a Bradley Beal, a Zach LaVine. So I just want to give you some examples, and then at the end of the video, I'm going to put together some trade packages, show you what this team is left with, and you can make the decision if you think now is the time for the Knicks to make a move. So if you like this video, do me a favor, smash that like button. And if you want to support the channel, make sure you're subscribed and you have notifications turned on. So with that being said, let's jump right into the first trade. So here we are, starting with the Paul George trade. So this trade was between the Clippers and the Oklahoma City Thunder. So in this deal, the Thunder gave up Paul George, who, like Damian Lillard, had multiple years left on his deal, and the Thunder got in return Danilo Gallinari, a serviceable starting caliber player who on the Hawks now is making over $20 million a year and coming off the bench is like a super sub. And they also had to give up Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, a player that a lot of us view as a potential star in this league or a future star in this league. And on top of the two players, the Clippers had to give up 5 first-round picks and 2 first-round swaps. So you might look at this deal and say, okay, it cost a lot for Paul George because Paul George had more years left on his deal. Well, there are other examples of players who had less time on their deal or only 1 year left on their deal, like say a Bradley Beal or a Zach LaVine. And that player, the example I would use for that scenario would be Anthony Davis. Now, Anthony Davis was traded from the Pelicans to the Los Angeles Lakers. And in this deal, Lakers received Anthony Davis, but they had to give up Brandon Ingram, a player that just signed a max deal, who a lot of people view as a star caliber player. You also have Lonzo Ball included in that deal, someone who this offseason is looking for a contract anywhere from 20 to 25 mil, and I believe has star potential, and I think a lot of Knicks fans feel the same way as well. And they also have to give up Josh Hart, who is not a star but is a solid role player, and he's probably going to command a salary or a contract between 12-15 million a year. And on top of those 3 players, the Lakers also had to give up the 4th overall pick in 2019 and 2 other first-round picks. So Anthony Davis, the price tag for him was, I think, extremely high. But in this situation, it worked. The Lakers were able to win a championship. And unlike the Clippers, who a lot of people, if they aren't able to win a championship with that group, they're going to look at that move as a failure. And if you want to look at the most recent superstar trade, you would have to then look at the Brooklyn Nets. In the Brooklyn Nets deal, they had to bring in other teams in order to get the deal done because they just didn't have the assets on their own. So this ended up being a 4-team deal, but I'm only going to focus on what the Nets had to give up. So in order for the Nets to get James Harden from the Houston Rockets, they had to give up Jarrett Allen, a player who I believe is a starting caliber player and someone who could be one of the top 10 centers in the league as he continues to grow and get better. The same thing could be said for Caris LeVert. Some were looking at him as a potential star or someone who could be a star. I won't go that far, but I think he's another solid starter that still has the potential in the room to grow. Also had to give up Taurean Prince in the deal, had to give up Kurix and Alexander Vezenkov, who was a drafting stash. So those 3 players, I won't say is a massive hit when you're talking about getting James Harden, but that's taking away some of the team's depth. But on top of the 5 players that the Nets had to give up in the deal, they also had to give up picks. They had to give up 3 first-round picks, and then they also had to give up the rights to 2 swaps. So once again, another scenario where the Houston Rockets could switch selections with the Nets in 2 different seasons. So you can see, even in the most recent trades, this is still a hefty price. Not when it comes to talent matching, because I won't say either Allen or Caris LeVert will ever be to the level of James Harden. But in this scenario, the Nets already had two superstars on their roster, and basically they swapped their depth and their future for a win now scenario. So to relate this to the Knicks, let's see what it would cost us to bring in, let's say, a Dame Lillard, and you can tell me if what we have left is going to be enough for us to contend or build a championship roster. So here we have all 8 players currently under contract. We got Randall, Knox, Obi, Mitch, Pell, RJ, Vildoza, and Emmanuel Quickley. Now, any deal for, let's say, Damian Lillard is going to have to include RJ Barrett. If you look at the deals I showed you before, they all included a player that had an immense level of potential and had already shown something in the league. And that matches perfectly with RJ Barrett. So RJ Barrett is included in any deal. There's no way the Portland Trailblazers GM can go to his owner or go to the fan base and say, we gave up our most prized asset and we didn't get the opposing team's best young piece. I don't think that's going to fly in whatever market, or in Portland or Washington or Chicago. Regardless of the location, RJ Barrett is going to be included in any big time deal. So if it's going to take RJ, move him out the equation. It's probably also going to take Obi Toppin, move him out the way. And I believe any deal for Dame Lillard is going to have to include also Mitchell Robinson or Emmanuel Quickley. So in this scenario, let's say Emmanuel Quickley has a little bit more promise to the Trailblazers and they want him. So now we bring in the prized asset, which would be Damian Lillard. Look who we have left on the roster. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Ian Bagley mentioned that if we were to do this deal, we would then have about $30 million left in cap space. But who is out there right now to really bring in for 30 mil? You know, do you go after a big fish like Kawhi, which I think this is the only way you would make a move like this? But then it's been reported that Kawhi just recently went under ACL surgery. So why would Damian Lillard want to facilitate a trade to the New York Knicks, knowing that he can't bring in another superstar like a Kawhi in free agency? And if you look at this roster here, we wouldn't have enough to trade for another star. We would have given up multiple first round picks, whether that be 3 or 4 first round picks, and then, 2 or 3 swaps. So we wouldn't have the assets to go out and make another trade. Not only that, with 30 million, I don't think there's any free agent on the open market outside of Kawhi that we can divvy that money up to and be able to field a championship contender. Look at Norman Powell. You go out there and bring in Norman Powell, you're paying him 20, 25 million, and then what? You have maybe 5 million left. You go out and bring in a Kelly Oubre. He said he wants 20 million. You have 10 million left. Same thing with Duncan Robinson. He wants 20 million. You have 10 million left. You like Gary Trent. He might command 15, 17 mil. You then only have 15, 13 mil in your war chest to bring in another, at that point, starter, you would assume. And then you still would not have the depth to really fuel a deep playoff run. So that's why I think if the Knicks were to go out there and make a major trade this offseason, it would be misguided. I think we should continue building through the draft and go out and we can spend some cap. We can go out and bring in some solid contributors. We can bring in Alonzo Ball, someone that has potential and can grow with this team. We can bring in someone, like I said, a Norman Powell, someone that can fill in on the wing, play solid defense, and knock down the 3 at over 40%. So if we go out there and do small moves like that and continue to fill out this team with young, promising talent and mixing in veterans here and there throughout the roster, I think that would be ideal for this team, especially when you look at what we're left with if we go out there and make a splash trade. So once again, let me know your comments down below. Do you think now is the time for the Knicks to go out there and make a splash? Me personally, I don't think it's the right time, but I would like to know your opinion. Once again, I'm Keith, host of Sports Vibes TV, and I'm out.